to replace Boris Johnson before a first round of voting by MPs tomorrow. The rules are that they need at least 20 MPs to support them, 2 nominators and at least 18 others to back them. And there is Sir Graham.
Nominated in alphabetical order, Kemi Badenoch, proposed by Lee Rowley, seconded by Julia Lopez. Suella Braverman, proposed by David Jones, seconded by Miriam Cates. Jeremy Hunt, proposed by Esther McVeigh and seconded by Anthony Mangnall. Penny Mordaunt, proposed by Dame Andrea Leadsom, and seconded by Craig Tracy. Rishi Sunak, proposed by Dominic Raab, seconded by Mel Stride. Liz Truss, proposed by Simon Clarke, seconded by Therese Coffey. Tom Tugendhat, proposed by Anne-Marie Trevelyan, seconded by James Daly. And Nadeem Zahawi, proposed by Brandon Lewis, seconded by Amanda Milling. Those 8 will go to the first round ballot tomorrow between 1:30 and 3:30, with the result announced as soon as we can after that. Thank you.
Well, short and sweet there from the chairman of the 1922 committee there, and simply telling us those that will proceed, as you heard Sir Graham say there, to the ballot of MPs tomorrow. All he mentioned there was the proposers and seconders, and then that they have got at least 18 other MPs to support them. The actual numbers we do not know, although I'm sure we will fairly soon, because this is going to be a fairly leaky leadership campaign. Let's go back to our political editor, Beth Rigby, on that. And then there were 8. Well, there were 9 about 15 minutes ago, but Sajid Javid withdrew voluntarily.
Yeah, and looking at that list, Dermot, it might be that 3, I could see 3 of them that potentially just do not get the numbers tomorrow to proceed to the next round, perhaps even 4 of them. We do know that Mordaunt, Sunak and Truss are the ones kind of in the lead. And then Tom Tugendhat, of course, who is the favoured candidate of the Liberal group within the party, the One Nation Conservatives. But look, this is going to get whittled down very quickly. We've got a ballot tomorrow and the first result. If you don't get 30 votes or more, you're out. And then there could be another ballot the next day. We could get to the final 2 as early as Monday next week, depending on how it all shakes out. But I really think that now there's going to be quite a big fight on the hand between Penny Mordaunt and Liz Truss to try and get into that final 2 with Rishi Sunak, who looks at the moment pretty nailed on as the clear front runner with MPs.
Well, let's talk more about reaction within the heart of Parliament itself. Sam Coates, our deputy political editor, is there in Central Lobby. So, Sam, wherever you are, wherever you're going to appear in my screens, down there, I suspect. Sam, what are you hearing? What's the reaction to that, more or less as expected, apart from the late withdrawal of Sajid Javid?
Well, I think the surprise in the last few hours is that Jeremy Hunt managed to get over the line. There were genuine questions. I'm told that members of the Hunt campaign were desperately phoning round Esther McVeigh, who he's promised to be Deputy Prime Minister in the event that he, pretty unlikely event it has to be say, does actually win. Phoning around desperate to get their candidacy, their candidate, the 20 names necessary. He is in the campaign. Sajid Javid, as you say, looks like he didn't get the numbers and has therefore resigned, has therefore gone out. But it really is a contest that hinges around the conversation about what's going to happen to Rishi Sunak, what's going to happen to Liz Truss, and what's going to happen to Penny Mordaunt, and the extent to which, over the next few days, hours and days, more of a Stop Rishi campaign builds up. Because although Rishi Sunak is undoubtedly, Dermot, the front runner in this contest with the number of MPs backing in him, there is clearly, as we've been hearing from people who are in Boris Johnson's cabinet, that they don't think that he's fit to take over the reins from Boris Johnson, and that he should be stopped from winning this contest. And I think, therefore, the conversation that's going on is, do most of Penny Mordaunt's supporters, are they prepared to back Liz Truss? Could it be the other way around? And what's going to happen to the vast majority of the votes of the MPs, the candidates that are standing, who are not going to make it? This is a contest based on people's second choice, in effect. And one of the things that's been going on behind the scenes here, quite important, we've seen some of the public launches of the campaigns, but one of the things that's really driving the dynamic, MPs tell me, are some of the private hustings that have been going on. Now, last night, the sort of Brexiteer group, the ERG, held their own private hustings. And it was at that, I'm told, that Liz Truss came across as firm on issues of the Northern Ireland Protocol and issues like that. Prime Ministerial was the word. One person who was at that hustings said that she came across, whereas Rishi Sunak just didn't quite look like he could always fill a room. He could be a little tetchy, as he was at points in that launch this morning. And I think those things are massively weighing on the views of MPs as they try and weigh up who to back. And so those private hustings, more of which there are going to be very soon, actually playing a big role in this otherwise public debate.
OK, let's get the views on that list of Katie Balls, Deputy Political Editor with The Spectator. So, Katie, do you think that this list is going to be whittled down fairly soon and coalesce around the Stop Rishi and Team Rishi strands?
Yeah, I mean, I just think the timetable means it's inevitable. But when we're looking at what's going to happen, I think it seems very likely, obviously in politics there's always surprises, that Rishi Sunak's on course for one of the final two spots. I think it probably helps. He has plenty of former whips, such as Gavin Williamson, on his team now, who we know are good campaigners, good with the numbers, and they'll be helping him with the next stages. But then also, I think now we're seeing the fight on the right. And in the early days of this contest, there were several candidates vying to be the candidate, and lots of warnings saying, well, actually, the MPs on the right of the party need to get around one candidate, otherwise they risk a situation where they don't really have someone representing their views. And I think we're starting to see Liz Truss emerge as that, with Jacob Rees-Mogg, Nadine Dorries endorsements today, suggesting despite the fact she voted Remain, she is as much a Brexiteer as Jacob Rees-Mogg. Now, I think Jacob Rees-Mogg's anti-Rishi Sunak sentiment is probably helping him get there to a degree, but can she continue that? In which case, I think you're starting to look at a potential final two. But as we said, Penny Mordaunt is still doing well in terms of numbers. But I think if the right can coalesce around a candidate, that is going to make it harder for Penny Mordaunt.
Katie, many thanks for that. Katie Balls there from The Spectator. Our political editor, Beth Rigby, is with me. Beth, let's talk about the MPs who are going to do the voting tomorrow. It's always said that they don't necessarily vote for the candidate they want, certainly in the first round. Sometimes they vote for a candidate from the other side to knock down. I mean, it's so complex, isn't it? The horse trading.
It is cloak and daggers now. And you are absolutely right. And one thing that really will help Rishi Sunak, as Katie was just saying, that he has on his bench now the SWAT team in the parliamentary party of whips and counters. Grant Shapps, the keeper of the list. I mean, he was predicting votes for Boris Johnson to precision points and the confidence vote. I mean, he's very good at spreadsheets, so he's handy to have a team. And Gavin Williamson and Mark Spencer and Mark Harper. But also, as you said, once you have a big group of MPs, you then can vote tactically to get them to lend votes to other candidates to knock other people out. And that is what you see. Now, in the last leadership race, when it was Boris Johnson, Jeremy Hunt and Michael Gove, you remember the revenge there from the Johnson camp. Hunt won by one vote, knocking Michael... Do you remember? Knocking Michael Gove out by one vote. Now, that's my memory. I hope it's not failing me. Now, I'm doubting myself.
Grant Shapps will know.
But the point was that it was better, in their view, to have Hunt in the final than Gove, because Hunt was a Remainer that now wanted Brexit, but a soft Brexit, and Johnson was the true Brexiteer, right? And so what you might see now is Rishi's team, if they get the kind of momentum, I just checked, he's got 45 public backers against 26 for Mordaunt, 21 for Truss. Whether they take a decision that actually Truss is more beatable in the final two than Mordaunt, and then do they start the skullduggery. I mean, I can't keep up.
To
But
be
whether they
discussed
start
because
messing with the
there's a lot
votes.
can go wrong with a strategy like that. But Sam Coates, as we say, well, precisely, Sam Coates is in the heart of the political cauldron there in Central Lobby, and you've got some reaction, Sam.
Cauldron, it certainly is, Dermot. Yes, I'm here with Andrew Mitchell. He's one of the prominent backers of Jeremy Hunt, who, to the surprise of some, actually managed to get on the ballot, got those 20 votes and nominations earlier today, potentially at the cost of Sajid Javid. Mr. Mitchell, how close was it for Jeremy Hunt to be ejected?
Oh, I don't think we ever had any doubts at all that he would make it onto the ballot paper. The question is what happens next, and I think some very good candidates have made it, and tomorrow we will see what happens in the next round.
But there were people talking about Jeremy Hunt, Esmond Vey, wandering around desperately making calls at the last minute. You say that you always had the votes?
I think that the opposite is the case, actually. I think that many colleagues believe there are three key criteria that are required to win this campaign. The first is to be unsullied by the recent Boris times. The second is to be experienced, preferably with a domestic as well as an international department. And the third is to be moral. And I think it's true to say that many of the candidates hit two of those three criteria, but only Jeremy Hunt hits all three.
But can we really, looking at the numbers for all of the candidates, can you really say that being unsullied is the quality that people want, given the vast numbers, 45 who are publicly backing Rishi Sunak, given the vast numbers that are backing Penny Mordaunt and Liz Truss? If MPs are willing to put their first preference votes for those, really not being in government doesn't matter too much to the MPs, certainly.
Well, I think there's 2 points to that. The first is that the key thing my colleagues want to do is win the next election. We want to ensure there isn't a socialist government. The question is, who is best placed to win that battle? I think that Jeremy Hunt is undoubtedly best placed because he's not sullied in that way. And, you know, all the other candidates have virtues, but I'm just trying to explain to you why I think he is the right man to become Prime Minister now for those three reasons and to take us forward, tackle the extraordinary problems which face us and win the next election.
There are some candidates like yours, like Tom Tugendhat, who want to draw a thick line between the Boris Johnson regime and the kind of premiership they would offer. But again, it looks like there are plenty of candidates that are prepared to be continuity Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, amongst that. Do you actually think that promising to change direction is a selling point right now?
I mean, we have to completely change the tone and character of the government. I mean, just look at the polling, look at what happened in the by-elections, look at the research. Drawing a line under the last couple of years is absolutely essential. And all the candidates, I'm sure, will draw that to some extent. But Jeremy preeminently marks a change, and that is a change we require if we're to hold our constituencies and win the next election. So
the next hurdle tomorrow, you need to get 30 MPs. Where are you going to draw your support from? Are you talking to supporters of Sajid Javid who dropped out? Where are you going to get the necessary numbers for tomorrow?
I think we draw our support from across the party. You've got a strong alliance between Jeremy and Esther, north-south, man, woman, Liberal Democrat facing, Labour facing, pro-Brexit. We're all past Brexit now. The reason I voted for Boris Johnson on the last occasion was I believed the country had to be led by a Brexiteer.
Braverman's campaign doesn't seem to be past Brexit. Liz Truss is playing up her Brexit credentials. Are you sure you called that right?
Yes, because that was why I voted for Boris last time. We had to be led by a Brexiteer. But we are through Brexit now, and I think it is a lesser issue. The key issue facing the country is what we do about this terrible cost of living crisis, the extraordinary international position in Europe with the war in Ukraine. It's what we do in Britain for our constituents, faced with a conglomeration of difficulties, which we frankly haven't seen in this country for many years.
Final question. Do you think this contest is desperately edifying? You can see Nadine Dorries, Jacob Rees-Mogg taking slugs out of the former Chancellor. Are you proud to be a Conservative right now?
I'm very proud of the fact that Jeremy Hunt's campaign, there will be no attacks on any other campaign. Jeremy made it clear that if anyone on his campaign attacked one of the other campaigns, they would be straight off it. We are fighting an absolutely clean campaign, and the key criteria is how do we tackle these extraordinary crises? How do we win the next election? In my opinion, Jeremy is the man.
Andrew Mitchell, thank you very much indeed. Yes, for some it has not been the most edifying of few days. There are even some supporters of Liz Truss in the Cabinet worried about the attacks by Nadine Dorries, by Jacob Rees-Mogg on Rishi Sunak. So many people are saying after this contest, which concludes on September the 5th, they've got to put the party back together again. On the basis of today and yesterday, that's looking like a tall order.
OK, Sam, many thanks for that. Our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates there. Well, joining me now is the Conservative MP for North Dorset, Simon Hoare. He's backing Rishi Sunak's bid to become Prime Minister. Very good to see you, Mr Hoare. Well, let me put that point that Sam Coates was making there about the attack on Rishi Sunak by Jacob Rees-Mogg and Nadine Dorries. And you'll be aware of the charge that he's putting up taxes. Jacob Rees-Mogg perhaps even called him a socialist, and that he was plotting while he was sitting there with Boris Johnson at his right hand, plotting against him.
Well, I mean, to echo what Andrew Mitchell was saying about Jeremy Hunt's campaign, I think Rishi's been very clear. He wants this to be a positive campaign about a vision of values and commitment to the party.
Well, those charges have been made in public.
I think they will ring hollow, frankly. If anybody was concerned with regards to what the government was doing, they could have resigned and spoken out, voted against the increases on, say, for example, national insurance contributions, but they didn't. So I think this is sort of slightly trying to shut the stable door after the horse has bolted. I don't recall any of those people who now seem to be making the most enormous fuss about these tax rises, having done so when they were going through. And the choice was, and it's worthwhile just reminding ourselves, why did we feel it was important to raise national insurance contributions? It was order to ensure that we didn't have, as constituency members of Parliament, long backlogs of people at our advice surgeries saying that they couldn't get medical surgery because of the backlog obviously created by COVID. And I think this speaks to a good story of Rishi Sunak. When a time when a lot of people say the Tory party is ideological, if you look at what he did with regards to NIC, if you look at what he did with regards to furlough and the support he gave to business and to employees, this was not an ideological chancellor. This was a chancellor being pragmatic.
And do you think he's not getting, can I just ask you about that?
Doing the right thing for the country.
It doesn't seem to be mentioned at all in terms of his back catalogue, so to speak. You know, what went on during the long pandemic, and that, I mean, it was, you know, and I'm saying this without fear or favour, without partisanship, it was applauded, the speed of that reaction in many other parts of the world as well, how the Treasury got it right. Do you think but he's getting no credit for that.
Well, I think he will, as people reflect upon it. I mean, you know, so much of this now seems to be quite ancient history. But an ideological chancellor, an ideological cabinet would have turned around and said, well, just let the markets decide. Businesses will succeed if they want to succeed and will fail if they're going to fail. He said, no, we have to look to a post-COVID economy and try and make sure that we're in best place. I agree with you. I think people have short memories. What we're going to see, I hope, over the next coming days, coming weeks, I'd like to see Rishi into the final two before party members through the summer, is a reminder of that.
Yeah, exactly.
And to show the energy, and to show the energy that an engaged Treasury.
Isn't the very point
and
about this contest that this is the Conservative Party talking to itself, initially the MPs and then to the membership, and it is ideological, and there's a lot of talk about the memory of Margaret Thatcher and tax cuts just looming so large in this debate early on.
James, you say talking to itself. I thought. What I was struck by, and you could say, well, Simon, hang on, you're supporting Rishi, so you're bound to say nice things about him. But I think what I was struck with by what he said this morning at his campaign launch was he's going to avoid the trap of just talking to the Conservative Party. This has got to be the Conservative Party and future leaders of the Conservative Party talking to the country as well, because we're not electing just a leader. We are electing somebody who's going to take the reign as Prime Minister, and I think he's fundamentally engaged in that. He comes from a good...
So as part of that democratic process, could I push it along a bit? If he were to win, would he hold a general election fairly soon? Because he hasn't been elected by the British people. Well, he has in his constituency. I know how it works.
Sure.
But he has not been endorsed as Prime Minister by the British people.
Look, it's a fair question, and I, in honesty, don't know what his thinking is on that. My hunch would be... I mean, get hold of, you know, Brenda from Bristol first and let her box your ears before she boxes mine. I think, given the scale of the pressures that we have, inflation, pressures with regards to the cost of living, the horrors going on in Ukraine and everything else, I'm not certain that the electorate at large would go, do you know what we need? Do you know what we really need now to solve all of these problems and to address our issues and concerns? It's a 6-week general election campaign. I think they're fed up of the process of politics, if you will. And we've had too much of this over the last few months of trying to shore this person up or shore the Prime Minister up or whatever it may happen to be. I think people now have a very legitimate clamour, very legitimate appetite to see politicians actually doing the job that we're paid to do, which is to take decisions. Some of them will be difficult, I know, but to take decisions in good faith to the betterment of the country. And a general election campaign is the last thing people will want to see,
Mr. Hall,
I'm sure.
Very good to see you. Simon Hall, supporter, as you heard there, of Rishi Sunak. And there are the contenders. Minus, it must be said, Sajid Javid and Grant Shapps. That's some of those who initially went into that contest this morning. How quickly things have changed. There you go. We're making it very clear, the ins and outs there. 8 left. Beth Rigby, our political editor, is here with me right now. 8 left, and we're thinking that certainly there's 1 or 2 there who may well find themselves not there this time tomorrow night.
Yeah, look, going into today, certainly Nadhim Zahawi and Jeremy Hunt were in sort of the mid-teens. So Jeremy Hunt was on 15, Nadhim Zahawi was on 14. They've got over the line this evening, but there has to be questions about whether or not they can continue through beyond that. But also, just out as we've been talking on this matter of kind of the infighting and the Stop Rishi campaign, Nadine Dorries saying in a tweet that there are dirty tricks of stitch up, dark arts, take your pick. Team Rishi want the candidate they know they can definitely beat in the final 2, and that is Jeremy Hunt. And that was on suggestions that someone telling journalists that Gavin Williamson had organised some siphoning off of some votes to let Jeremy Hunt get over the thresholds. That was from Dan Hodges there from the Mail on Sunday.
That would be a huge stretch for them to get Jeremy Hunt into the final 2, given that he's never going to get the Leaver vote.
What's interesting in Nadine Dorries tweeting that is when I grabbed Jacob Rees-Mogg earlier, if he had private personal animosity towards Rishi Sunak, he was not openly saying that when we spoke. So that was behind closed doors, if that is how he feels. He was sort of saying, I'm not backing Rishi because of policy differences. Now, he did take a little dig at him, but it wasn't as overt as Nadine Dorries there. And of course, Nadine Dorries, that's completely her prerogative to do it. But politically, what some people in rival camps have suggested to me is that for Liz Truss, if there is such aggressive briefing against Sunak from those in the Truss camp, does it turn other MPs off her camp? Because actually, everyone is publicly saying we want to fight a clean campaign. What the parliamentary party doesn't want to do beyond this leadership race is continue with these divisions that are basically driving the party apart, driven Boris Johnson out of number 10. But most importantly, if you're a Conservative MP, driven your polling down with members of the public. So it's interesting to see kind of how this plays out in the coming days and how aggressive different teams become to each other openly as we get down to the final end of the battle. But I have to say, as you were saying, for Jeremy Hunt, it's going to be very hard for Rishi Sunak's team to kind of propel Jeremy Hunt into the final 2. I mean, Rishi Sunak would need a hell of a lot of votes to be able to control that.
And the danger is if you're going to lend your votes out, so to speak, as that theory goes, then you begin to lose momentum in the public eye.
Yeah,
think,
I mean,
is your campaign failing?
And Boris Johnson was like a runaway train. I did actually look back. It wasn't 1 vote that Jeremy Hunt beat Gove by, it was 2. But Boris Johnson had like 160 and then they were in the 70s. And that's the thing, like Rishi Sunak at the moment doesn't have this massive gap between him and the others. But let's see how the cards fold and then who comes into his deck as we go along in the next 48 hours. I'm really interested to see where Sajid Javid goes for a start.
Yeah, and it'd be really interesting to see what the actual numbers were. All we got from Graham Brady was the fact that those candidates were through to voting tomorrow. Plenty more on that coming up. You're watching the News Hour at 6. Also coming up, another bad day for England's white ball side as they're beaten by 10 wickets at the Oval by India.
Obviously, with the weather, it's really, really important that we monitor it and monitor our animals really, really carefully.